Taylor Swift has a new album out. We're just hoping the Dodgers put out a new version of their team that can win more games. We're going to talk about why we're pessimistic, why we're optimistic, and where we fall on that spectrum. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. So please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room over the past decade. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And Vince, the Dodgers had a day off on Thursday, so there's no game to talk about. Maybe a much needed day off. You know, there's times during the season when we hate days off because we're so excited for the next game. I think this is probably one that was welcome for the team and for the fans too.
Yeah, you know, we're not usually fans of days off, but when you've lost 3 of the last 4 series and you're, you know, in that part of April and May every year where Dodger fans are hating themselves, I think, you know, a day off is nice.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, it is every year, pretty much. Like the Dodgers struggle a little bit in April, especially relative to the rest of the season. And so, you know, we're going to dig into reasons for pessimism and reasons for optimism, and then we're going to talk at the end about where each of us fall. I have no idea if we fall in the same place on the optimism spectrum or not, but I guess we'll find out in about 20 minutes. But let's start with reasons for pessimism, Vince. Just, you know, get that out of the way. You everydayers know I am optimistic to a fault. But you know, I'm also realistic. I can see some reasons for pessimism, but you know, I guess for me, first reason for pessimism for me is I don't think Chris Taylor has it anymore. I feel like, you know, he's been through slumps before, but never anything quite like this. And he's never been 33 years old when he was going through a slump like this before. And so I worry that Chris Taylor is not going to bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, that's one where somebody messaged me today about Taylor specifically and kind of said, oh, he's not making any adjustments, any changes, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, look, his swing is what got him to this point, and his swing isn't changing. He's not going to shorten up. He's not going to do it. You know, his swing is what it is and how he got to this point for a reason. And, yeah, who knows if his swing can be off by that much of a split second or whatever it is, which might be age, declining bat speed, everything else, and just having that much off could put him in the slump he's in now.
Yeah. I mean, his swing before he had this swing, that's why he got traded to the Dodgers for a guy who pitched a total of 12 2/3 innings in the big leagues with the 8.53 ERA. You know, the Zach Lee trade is famous in Dodger circles, and we, you know, love Chris Taylor for what he's done for the team. But before he changed the swing, before he developed this, he was a 4A player. And now he is a major leaguer, or has been for the last several years. But it might be that swing had a kind of short shelf life.
Yeah. The one thing, I guess we can say that for the second part, is that he doesn't play a huge role, you know, and shouldn't need to. But again, you know, reason for pessimism on my end. And, you know, I talked about Gavin Lux yesterday. I don't know if I'm all in on pessimism on Gavin Lux, but on the bottom of the order as a whole, compare, you know, adding Muncy and Teo to that, who just strike out a lot. They, you know, they're obviously going to have a lot of big moments, but they do strike out a lot. And then Outman and Lux and whoever's playing the outfield, you know, if Pajes doesn't work out, there's a lot of swing and miss and not too much. I mean, I think it can change, but I also don't believe that it's going to change. I'm hoping that it's going to change, but I can't say for sure that I know it's going to change.
Yeah. And I can see that, like, for the most part, I can deal with the strikeouts, you know, that every once in a while, there's a situation where you'd much rather have a fly out or a ground out than a strikeout. But, 80% of the time, a strikeout doesn't hurt you any more than another out. But that 20%, when you have two guys back to back in the lineup who strike out a lot, and then you throw in Outman as, I may bring up Outman in the second segment when we're being optimistic, but his strikeout rate is right up there with Muncy's and Teoscar's, just a little bit better than theirs. And so you do have a lot of potential to have, some combination of Mookie, Ohtani, Freddie, and Smith get the ducks on the pond, and then just watch guys flail away and strike out and leave guys. I don't know if that's a case of, do you split up the strikeouts? But it's not like they have any major contact. It's not like they have a Luis Arraez they can put between those guys. But having those back to back, I remember in 2018, I think it was, with Bellinger and Jock back to back, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like every once in a while you get a rally going, and then those two guys would strike out back to back. And obviously Belly and Jock, both big contributors to the team, but that swing and miss when it comes in bunches can be pretty frustrating.
Yeah, and it just puts so much onus on that top three in the order, to where if one or two of them doesn't have the best day, or they all get hits but in separate at bats and innings, then your offense is going to struggle to get going. And again, in the long term, in the regular season, I'm not necessarily worried about it, but obviously, when it comes down to October, I do worry about it. Somebody also brought up to me in Twitter DMs, kind of comparing the Dodgers to the D-backs, and the Dodgers are home run reliant, and the Diamondbacks, have many ways to beat you, blah, 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 blah. It's, as of right now, maybe last year in the postseason, obviously that was the case, but like right now, the Diamondbacks are only a couple home runs behind the Dodgers. The Dodgers are better in average OPS and on base percentage. The Diamondbacks are way better with runners in scoring position, which is the main difference now. And the Diamondbacks are way better at putting the ball in play, which again can account for stuff sometimes, but doesn't also necessarily mean that it's going to matter.
And also, the Diamondbacks are 9-10. Like that's the in our YouTube comments, somebody said the Diamondbacks and the Reds, they play small ball, they steal bases and stuff, and both of those teams have worse records than the Dodgers. The Dodgers are playing poorly right now, but it's if it was as easy as, we should bunt more, they would have figured it out. But getting out on purpose doesn't actually make you a better team, and bunting for a hit isn't actually easy. So I'm never totally sure what people want when they say bunt more, but you play this style of game that your personnel lends itself to.
It's not changing. Like that's the one thing. Like if you want to be pessimistic as a fan and you think this is the reason they're losing, it's not changing. The Dodgers have sacrificed contact for power, and that's the way it is. Like it's not going to change. There's nobody in the minors either to come up and kind of fix that.
Yeah. And last year, in the playoffs against the Diamondbacks, yes, the Diamondbacks won the series, but that was because the Dodgers offense didn't hit. Like obviously game one, it was the pitching, but the Dodgers scored 2 runs in each game. And if the Dodgers had scored 5.6 runs in each game, like they did during the regular season, they would have won the series. They would have been up 2-1 after 3 games instead of down 3-0 and going home. So, we can look at all the things that the Diamondbacks did, but the fact is they only scored 4 runs in each of the last 2 games of the series, and that should have been good enough pitching for the Dodgers to beat them if the offense had shown up. But yeah, and I guess my last thought on pessimism is what we're seeing right at this moment is what we've seen in the postseason sometimes. And I mentioned this the other day. It's like, well, when the Dodgers are good in April, people say, well, it doesn't matter if you can't do it in October. And when they're bad in April, people say this is why you're going to be bad in October. So it's kind of a no-win. It's anytime they struggle in the ways that we've seen in the postseason, it's going to lend itself to a little pessimism.
Yeah. I mean, the one other point, and can be said every year, but I think this year specifically at this particular moment is the bullpen. You don't know if Ryan Brazier is going to be able to replicate what he did last year. Joe Kelly's always going to be a wild card. Gratterall, you can only count on him to do so much, even if he does come back fully healthy. Treinen, we're not even sure how he's going to look when he comes back healthy. Daniel Hudson is older. Who knows if he can last the whole season? Evan Phillips is probably the one guy that there's really no questions about. But even then, that you can always question the closer if you really want to. So I think the bullpen is where it comes. But to me, that can segue into our next segment of why there is optimism.
Yeah, we are going to come back in a minute. And despite what the recent record says, there are reasons for optimism. We're going to dig into some of those. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. So if you want to get into FanDuel, you've been thinking, I should join FanDuel. Well, they're going to give you $150 in bonus bets. And so that is an easy way to get in and see if you're any good at this stuff and have fun. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Lock On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank our everydayers for being with us every day. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. We really appreciate you. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. We had a quiet day on the Insiders Club today for the first time in a while. We talked the other day about hopefully the Dodgers wouldn't send Landon Knack back to the minors until Friday. So you get one more day of major league pay. And looks like that's what they did. We still assume Knack will be heading back on
Robert
Friday.
said he's going to get another start. So unless they plan on ILing somebody.
Oh, maybe I missed that. Yeah, so maybe it won't be him. And with the latest Walker Buehler news, which is that his rehab start didn't go super great. And so maybe that has them reevaluating the possibility of Buehler jumping into the rotation soon. So, we'll see. So yeah, maybe, but there probably will be some transactions soon just for the purposes of arms. Although getting through Wednesday, I guess the one bright side was they didn't have to use a ton of arms, and then they had the day off on Thursday. And so pretty well rested bullpen now. But the Insiders Club, the point of that is it's a lot of fun. We text with you. You can text back and forth all our thoughts on rumors, news, all that stuff. So go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. All right, Vince, give me some optimism. Give me a reason you're optimistic about this Dodgers team.
Yeah, so the segue I had was the bullpen can be better because there are a lot of arms in the Dodgers system that can help out. I've already been an advocate for Kyle Hurt to be a full-time reliever at this point. I still think that's something the Dodgers should look into just because, they're going to need relievers, and he's not going to be a starter realistically. He at best, he's going to be a number 5 starter unless some drastic change happened just based on this year and next year, what they have already signed up. Now, obviously injuries could force their hand a different way, but Kyle Hurt's a reliever. The other part is that, Landon Knack could be a reliever if they need him later on in the year. He had a good start. He has good enough stuff. Could play up in a shorter burst. That's also possible. Michael Grove has been better as of late. I'm not sure I'm all the way in on the train yet, but I've said a one-inning reliever for Michael Grove is probably his best bet as well. So I think the reason for optimism for the bullpen is all of that. Plus, you can use the flip side of what I talked about in pessimism. Blake Trinan might be back to normal and just had, the unfortunate situation of cracking some ribs. Brusdar Graterol is a guy that gets better as the season goes on, and now he's going to have a little bit extra rest. So, maybe he will be ready to go. Daniel Hudson, of all the bad injury luck he's had, he's due for some good luck. So maybe, that's possible. So I think all of that kind of, I'm not worried about the bullpen as much as I am as maybe the hitting right now.
Yeah, I even think Joe Kelly could end up pretty good. He's got the stuff, and he gives us a heart attack. But, even his first year with the Dodgers in 2019, people think he had a terrible year. Really, he had a terrible first few appearances, and his ERA never really recovered. And he was always kind of Joe Kelly-ish, making us sweat and stuff. But really after those first few appearances, he was actually pretty darn solid that year. So he's still got the stuff. So yeah, plenty of reasons for optimism with the bullpen. For me, I think the main reason for optimism is just as simple as the guys they have are better than they're currently playing. Specifically Shohei Ohtani in his career with runners in scoring position has been really good. And so there's no way he's going to keep batting, 054 or whatever it is right now with runners in scoring position. Freddie Freeman, there's no sure things in baseball, but it's about as close as you can get to a sure thing is Freddie Freeman's going to hit the ball, and he's not currently. And so the fact that the Dodgers are still in first place, still have a winning record despite those things, like even if the bottom of the order never improved, just Ohtani getting better situational luck and Freeman getting back to being Freddie Freeman is going to make a huge difference for them.
Yeah, and that's where, optimism lies for me too, is just that top. We've seen some Dodgers be top heavy. I don't know if we've ever seen a Dodgers team in recent memory this top heavy at the moment. I think when we were coming into the season, I didn't think we thought it was this top heavy. And realistically, like when I was talking on yesterday's episode, like you go Mookie, Ohtani, Freddie, Will Smith, Max Muncy, Teo, like that's a solid 6. Even if Muncy and Teo strike out a lot, and even with the struggles that Ohtani has had runners in scoring position and Freddie just the last 2 weeks or so, that's a solid top 6. Like you're be hard pressed to beat that top 6. Now 7, 8, 9, like I said, even if it's a black hole, there's still enough to get you. That top of the order is going to bat at least 3 times. More often than not, they're going to bat at least 4 or 5 times if they, contribute and score runs offensively. So I think that is the reason for optimism. And then, kind of the next point for me is they haven't had this type of potential dominance at the top of a rotation before. Like even years when Hyunjin Ryu was really, really good and, had a low ERA, and even, years that Julio was really, really good and had a low ERA, they weren't dominant pitchers. And when it comes to October, you do see finesse pitchers do well, or guys that are good pitchers do well, but you see stuff play up, and you see guys it's funny to talk about Tyler Glasnow considering he's had struggles in the postseason, but his stuff will play up. And, what you assume with the Dodgers, the Rays are analytically driven and one of the better teams at developing pitchers. I'm always going to take the Dodgers side of things of making pitchers better. Yamamoto is going to figure it out. He has a whole season to figure it out, and he'll be good. Bobby Miller, once he gets back and healthy, that's top tier stuff. And I'm always going to bet on top tier stuff in October over, anything else. And I think the Dodgers have that, but they haven't had before. Like Clayton Kershaw, he hasn't had top tier overpowering stuff. He's been really good at being a pitcher. But when it comes to October, there has been some struggles, and you can't rear back and throw 99 and save yourself a little bit when you're struggling in October. And these guys can do that.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. My next reason for optimism, I mentioned in the first segment that I might bring up James Outman here. And I think James Outman has turned a corner. I don't know if he's going to be a great hitter, but in his last 8 games, he's batting 286, 348 on base percentage, 476 slugging percentage. That's an 824 OPS. That is perfectly serviceable for a good defensive center fielder. And his strikeout rate in those 8 games, 5 strikeouts and 23 plate appearances. That's a 21.7 strikeout rate, 21.7% strikeout rate. That is better than league average. He's been striking out less than league average over his last 8 games. And that's probably going to go up a little bit, but know what else is going to go up? His batted ball luck. His ex-WOBA is much higher than his WOBA. If you don't know those words, WOBA is weighted on base average. It's just you don't even need to know how it's calculated, but just know that it's supposed to be put on a on base percentage scale to say how good a hitter is. And Outman's WOBA is quite a bit lower than his expected WOBA, which is based on how well he's hitting the ball. And we've seen that line drives right at right fielder, and bad luck just hitting the ball hard, but right at people. That stuff will even out, and he will continue. If he can keep making contact, good contact, that's all going to even out. And that would be huge, especially, if Andy Pages can do something, and if Outman can start hitting the ball, suddenly the bottom of that lineup is like, oh, we have a chance to turn this over and get back to the big four again. Instead of like, okay, well, now we're at the inning where we all get out and then we go play defense again.
Yeah. And for Outman, the one thing that also lends you the optimism of him being better, other than the fact that he's been playing better as of late, is that we've already seen him make adjustments in the big league. He had a really great first month last year, a terrible second month last year, made adjustments and was solid the rest of the season. And even right now, he's had, a not so great start to the season. And even in those couple of weeks has started to make adjustments and be better. And I think that's one thing where his swing isn't Chris Taylor's swing. It isn't that, tinkered and everything else. I think it is just a matter of laying off the pitches that he's not going to be able to hit and laying into the pitches that he can hit.
Yeah. And I just pulled up Outman's Baseball Savant page. His WOBA right now is 288 compared to last year, 344. His ex-WOBA, 330 compared to last year's 325. So last year he got a little bit of good luck. This year he's had significant bad luck based on his batted ball quality, and his sweet spot percentage is quite a bit higher than it was last year. Like his max exit velocity is right around the same. His average exit velocity is better than last year. Everything about him, he's, the way he's hitting the ball is at least as good as last year. It's just the results haven't been yet, but I think that's coming. So any other reasons for optimism before we take a break and then come back and see where we land on the spectrum, Vince?
No, other than the fact that the Dodgers are going to be in the playoffs, and that's enough optimism for me to just be a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, you got 6 months to figure it out, figure out or 5 months to figure out how to win in October. So we're going to come back in a minute, and we are going to talk about where we fall on the optimism spectrum, what we think is going to happen. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 fantasy sports app. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB in the PrizePicks app for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. We're back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially want to thank our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. You can also become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. And you can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network over on YouTube and the Amazon Fire channels. You would think a guy putting a podcast on YouTube would be able to pronounce the word YouTube a little bit better, but sometimes it's YouTube. It's like Utah.
Of home.
Yeah. You hear we're getting an NHL team here?
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I haven't heard what's going to happen to the minor league hockey team that's been here. I don't know if they have to go somewhere else now. Guess we'll find out.
The LA team is Ontario's. The Kings is Ontario.
Yeah, and the Utah Grizzlies don't actually play in Salt Lake. They play in West Valley City, which is, I think, borders Salt Lake. It's very, very close, but yeah, I guess we'll see. I'm excited. I like hockey. I haven't had a favorite hockey team since I was a teenager. So I can finally have a hockey team to root for, but that's neither here nor there because we have a baseball team to root for, and that's the Dodgers. I'm wearing a Dodgers shirt right now. Kind of, it's my coach shirt for my son's team. They almost make it look like the real Dodgers jersey. It's a similar font, but not quite it, but it's fun coaching this team. So, and my Dodgers lost tonight after they won yesterday. My son pitched a no-hitter and hit a home run. So that was a good game. Today he didn't pitch. And so the team lost. I think there may have been a connection there.
Early 2010 Kershaw's.
Yeah. A little bit of that. But our Dodgers play today. They start a series against the Mets. weekend series, and then they go on the road. Are they in DC? Their first, is that where they go first?
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be good. They can get their revenge on the Nationals, but they have the Mets to warm them up, and hopefully start that hot stretch. Dodgers always hit a hot stretch, and sometimes it's crazy hot, 43-7, 42-8. Sometimes it's just reasonably hot, 36-14. But they get hot. They're a good team. Like, I guess let's do a scale of 1 to 100, Vince. 100 is 100% confident the Dodgers are going to win the World Series, and 1 is totally confident the Dodgers are going to miss the playoffs. Where would you put your number?
I think my generic number is probably always 75, 80%, just based on the fact that I'm not optimistic once October hits.
That's your resting optimism,
yeah.
right?
So I think I'm at 72%. Not much. If I started the season at 75%, I've only gone down 3%, and that's for the reasons I laid out in the first segment. And that's just a matter of we haven't seen the Dodgers falter in the regular season since they've started this string of making the postseason. So it's hard for me to believe they're going to just falter all of a sudden in the regular season now, especially considering the talent they do have. We've seen other teams that are either supposed to be talented or are talented fizzle out, but I don't think the Dodgers have that in them. So I think that 72% can get up to 75% with like a hot streak, and it'll go right back to where it should be.
Yeah. And maybe that was a better approach to take it, is how much has it changed over the last 2 weeks as the Dodgers have been struggling. And, mine, like, I don't think I am any less optimistic about the Dodgers winning the division than I was 2 weeks ago. I don't think that has changed at all. And because of that, I don't think my overall number on them winning the World Series has changed either, because if there's one thing we've learned over the years, it's that how the Dodgers play in the regular season often has no bearing on how they play in the postseason. And so that's come back to bite us several times, but in this case, it could be a good thing. If you win the division, you get to the postseason, and we see it every year. Last year, the Diamondbacks were pretty bad, and then they went to the World Series. And the year before that, the Padres were pretty bad, and they went to the NLCS. And the Phillies were pretty bad, and they went to the World Series. And, it's the Nationals in 2019 were pretty bad, and they won the World Series. Even when the Braves won the World Series in 2021, they weren't a great team in the regular season, but they won the World Series. And so there's so much of a disconnect that, the eternal optimist in me keeps thinking one of these years that has to work in our favor. Like the fact that the Dodgers so many times have been victimized by, we are an awesome regular season team, and then we fell apart in the postseason. Like, not that I'm rooting for them to only win 92 games this year or something. But as long as they get hot in October, I don't care if they win 92 or 120. Overall, I'd still rather have them win 120, because that is indicative of how good a team you are. And I do still believe, and maybe it's naive of me, maybe I shouldn't believe this anymore, but I do still believe that it's better to be a better team in the postseason. I do think that overall, your chances of winning are better if you're a better team. The fact is, it took a historically bad runners in scoring position streak in 2022 for the Dodgers to get knocked out of the playoffs. And I think that was bad luck. And I think overall, if the 2022 Dodgers and the 2022 Padres play a 5-game series 100 times, the Dodgers win it 87 times. Problem is, we got one of those 13. And, same with last year's Diamondbacks. I think last year's Dodgers beat last year's Diamondbacks 92 times out of 100. But that means, 8 times they're going to lose. And so, those are made up numbers. Don't argue with me about stats, but the fact is, being a better team is still a good thing. And the Dodgers still have a very, very good team. And as Freddie Freeman bounces back from his slump, as Shohei Ohtani gets settled in and starts hitting regardless of the situation, and it's James Outman and, whatever moves that we didn't even talk about, the trade deadline and the fact that this Dodgers ownership is in it to win it. They are going to make whatever moves they need to at the trade deadline. So there's so many reasons to think that by the time October rolls around, cross your fingers for good health, because if they're healthy, I think they're going to be pretty darn good.
Yeah, and that's always the reason for optimism with this Dodgers team. Like I said, we haven't seen them falter in the regular season. The closest they did was 2018. And even then, like, that team was probably the most confident I've been in a team to make the World Series, ironically, just because I felt like they just need to get to October. Like, they felt 2017 was right there. They got a hangover, and I think they're going to do it. And I think the last two, I do think that the Padres being competitive and staying competitive the entire season, regardless of what you consider a rivalry or not, I think the Padres get the Dodgers juices flowing just a little bit more than any other team at this particular moment.
Yeah, that might be. And yeah, if it keeps them competitive or whatever, and who knows why things have worked out the way they have the last 2 years. There's all sorts of theories about rest and complacency and whatever. It could just be slumps at the wrong time. Like, if you look at Tyler Glasnow's last start, if he did that in October, people would be talking about how he's a choker who can't handle the stress of October. When really, was he a choker who can't handle the stress of mid-April? It's just bad games happen. And it's the same with, Freddie Freeman had this slump in October. Oh, choker. Slumps happen. And all we can do is hope that the slumps don't happen in October this time.
Yeah, I did see a post of the final out of the 2022 division series, and Freddie Freeman was 3 for 3 that game before he struck out to finish the game. So, like, it just was a matter of they weren't getting the hits from everyone when they needed them, but they were getting hits.
Yeah. Yeah. And, in that game, we had Will Smith's line out to Jurickson Profar with bases loaded. That I've mentioned this so many times. If it's 15 feet to the left or the right, the Dodgers win that game and they win the series, because, as I said, either you or me was scheduled to start for the Padres in Game 5 of that series. Like, if the Dodgers win Game 4, they're winning the series. And it was just some bad luck, and bad luck on the Ha-Seong Kim double, bad luck with the umpire. It was what's his name? I can't remember the umpire's name now. He was my favorite umpire, but now I've blocked on him. The guy who saved the lady's life in Pittsburgh, whatever his name is. He's dead to me now. He's messed me up too many times. But yeah, so I think, I guess I'll say my number is 82% optimistic to win the World Series. And that's about the same as it was 2 weeks ago. Nothing's really changed it for me. Yeah. You got anything else for today, this week, Vince?
No, let's, the Mets are hot, so let's cool them down.
Let's cool them down. Let's turn these fortunes around. That's going to do it for us for this week. We will be back on Sunday night, Monday morning, to talk about this Mets series. Thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, especially thanks to our everydayers. And remember to become an everydayer by watching or listening every weekday morning. You can subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and that will make that easier. You become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles over on YouTube, 2 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and both of our DMs are open there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning. We hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Have a good one.